Happy Wednesday, sophomores. Today's lesson is week 9, lesson 41. Let's get started. Today's joke of the day is hilarious. I must say so myself. What kind of shoes do robbers wear? Sneakers. I guess they're sneaking around. As you know, we are on day 3 of week 9 lessons. The video you should be watching right now is called ELA G10W9L41. The text is My Possessions Myself. And today you'll be analyzing the text. And when you get down to lesson 41, as always, read the materials section so you can remind yourself what you need for today. The learning target for today is I can engage in a critical review of a text to determine the advantages and disadvantages of being a culture that is driven by personal possessions. So today you're really going to focus on the final 2 paragraphs of the text where the advantages and disadvantages are discussed. And you're going to essentially analyze those paragraphs and weigh in with your own personal opinions. Let's quickly discuss the read, think, talk, write protocol for today. For the read section, you're going to focus on rereading paragraphs 16 and 17, and you're going to look for the advantages and disadvantages that the author provides in relation to the fact that we are what we possess. So those 2 paragraphs are where the advantages and disadvantages are introduced, and you're going to reread them and focus on those advantages and disadvantages. For the think section, you're going to think about the following questions. Do I agree with the advantages and disadvantages the author lists? Are there additional advantages and disadvantages that the author missed? Explain. So the author only included a few advantages and disadvantages. Do you agree with them? But are there some that were missed in your opinion? And when you get to the note catcher, you'll see that this is listed here, where you have to start off and basically just think about whether you agree or disagree, and whether there are advantages or disadvantages that were missed. Make sure you capture your thoughts here. For the talk section today, you're going to talk about the following question. Overall, do you feel like personal possessions are having a positive or negative long-term impact on our well-being? Explain. So this is your personal opinion. Think about all the possessions that you own. Do you feel like these possessions are having a positive or negative long-term impact on our well-being as a society? But you can think about your own well-being. And for the write section today, you're going to essentially complete the analyze the text questions, which are on the note catcher. So when you get to the note catcher, you'll see the 4 questions listed there, and you can actually write your responses directly on the note catcher. For the closing today, you're going to share your responses just to number 4 and 5 of the analyze the text questions. You don't have to share your responses to all the questions unless you want to. And then, as always, read a book for at least 20 minutes and document your reading in the reading log. So the quick model today is around the advantages and disadvantages of materialism, so paragraph 16 and 17. And before just jumping into the model, I wanted to just one more time go over what is asked of you in the read think part today, because those 2 sections relate to everything you have to do when analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of materialism. So I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page before starting the model. So for the read section today, you have to reread just paragraph 16 and 17. And focus on the advantages and disadvantages, because that's where they're first introduced. They're actually the only time they're introduced in the text. And then for the think section, you have to think about the following questions. Do I agree with the advantages and disadvantages the author lists? Are there additional advantages and disadvantages that the author missed? Explain. So I created a little graphic organizer here that I'm going to capture my thoughts on, and I'll go over each of the different boxes with you. If you want to pause the video and basically just make the same exact graphic organizer yourself, you can. You don't have to. I just wanted to have it here in this table because it's easier for me to sort of document my thoughts. And so you may want to do the same thing and make one on your own too. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll read these 2 paragraphs together, paragraph 16 and paragraph 17. And then we'll take some time going through each of the boxes, and I'll share my thoughts as like how I would answer these questions if I was a student completing this work on my own. And again, you can feel free to use my answers, or if you have additional things to write beyond what I just wrote, you can always add to it, or just start from scratch too. So let's get started with reading paragraph 16 and 17, and then we'll go over to the boxes and answer the questions together. Is the fact that we are what we possess desirable or undesirable? There is no simple answer, but certain advantages and disadvantages seem evident. Among the advantages is that possessions provide a sense of the past, Many studies have shown that the loss of possessions that follows natural disasters or that occurs when elderly people are put in institutions is often traumatic. What people feel in these circumstances is, quite literally, a loss of self. Possessions also help children develop self-esteem, and learning to share possessions may be important in the growth of both individual and aggregate senses of self. So those are the advantages. Let's read the next paragraph and learn about the disadvantages. Incorporating possessions deeply into the sense of self can also have undesirable consequences. Too much attachment to pets can reflect an unhealthy drive to dominate and possess power and result in less devotion to family and friends. Investing too much of the self in collections and other possessions may displace love from people to things. Regarding other people as parts of ourself can lead to jealousy and excessive possessiveness. Or by identifying too strongly with a spouse or child, we may end up living vicariously instead of developing our own potential. As Erich Fromm asked in his book, To Have or to Be, if I am what I have, and if what I have is lost, who then am I? Wow, two good paragraphs. Let's start with identifying the advantages and disadvantages that the author lists. So for the advantages, the author lists that having material possessions can provide a sense of the past. He talks about the example of like loss of possessions can be traumatic, like if you're experiencing a natural disaster and you lose all your stuff in an earthquake, for example, or if you're an older person and you're put into like a nursing home, you can't always bring your possessions with you, and so they're essentially lost. That can be traumatic. So that just goes to show that these possessions are connected to our past and upbringing, and so losing them can be really, really sad, traumatic. Also, another advantage is they can help children with their self-esteem. So, like sometimes kids are bullied, and having certain possessions can make them feel, valuable or valued or appreciated, which isn't fair, but that's just the way our society works. So sometimes they can help with a kid's self-esteem. Also depends on what the possession is, but sometimes like there are possessions and objects that can help kids get through some of the things they're trying to work through. So, like the classic example is if you are a child of color, like a person of color, and you look in the world and don't really see anyone that looks like you aside from your family, having like a doll that looks like you could really be powerful and can help with your self-esteem. So that's an example of a possession sort of helping with someone's self-esteem and boosting their identity. And also the last advantage is it can aid children in learning how to share. So if kids have possessions and they're with friends or with kids their own age, they can learn how to share possessions, and that's an important skill that kids need to learn. So without possessions, it may be harder for them to learn that. Some disadvantages that the author lists: too much attachment on pets can lead to a drive to dominate and possess power. So if you are too attached to your dog, it's like you're owning your dog essentially, even if you feel like it's part of your family. And that can lead to sort of like this over possessiveness and this need to control things, even if you're not aware that this is happening. It can also lead to people loving things over people. So this is sort of connected to the first one. You may exert power and dominance over your pet, but you actually may love like your pet or other things more than you love people. So you value like those relationships with those items and those pets more than you do with humans. That can be problematic. It can cause jealousy and possessiveness. This is connected to the first one. Like if someone else has the same item as you, or if someone else like in your family is like showing or giving your pet more attention than they're giving you, or you feel like your pet loves someone else in your family more, it can lead to serious jealousy issues of wanting to just eliminate other people and just have that item or have that pet just to yourself. And then last but not least, it can lead to living vicariously through others. So if like one of your friends or one of your family members has a lot of possessions that you admire and you don't personally have, you may want to live vicariously through them and through their experiences because you don't feel like your life is enough. And so you're seeking fulfillment by living vicariously through someone else, and that can be incredibly problematic and damaging to your own sense of identity. Okay, let's go to the second row of questions. So let's start with the advantages column. So the question is, do I agree with these advantages that we talked about a minute ago? I said I agree because sometimes possessions can fill a void in someone's life. Material objects are not only useful because they remind people of the good times of the past, but they also help shape young kids in the present. So overall, I agree with the three advantages that are listed there, because I feel like possessions may fill a void in your life if like there is a void that's there because maybe you have issues with the people in your life, and so the possessions can fill that void. I wouldn't say they'll permanently fill that void, but temporarily they may, until maybe you find another more permanent way to fill that void. And they also not only like help people hold on to important moments of the past, but they also help shape young kids in the present, and that's sort of connected to like the sharing concept and the self-esteem building concept, because possessions can actually help kids really develop their self-esteem and learn how to properly share. Now, on the disadvantages side, do I agree with these disadvantages? I also agree with these disadvantages too, because an over-reliance on possession can lead to people overexerting their control. People may start to value their possessions more than people. Also, they may become jealous if others have more than them. And yeah, I really think that the disadvantages listed there are key and are important, and some of the most important, mainly because like people tend to rely and value their possessions too much. It can lead to jealousy, it can lead to broken relationships, it can lead to people trying to overexert their control and dominance because they just want to keep having things that make them happy, and they want to be the happiest, or they want to be able to control what makes them happy, and so they feel like they have this level of dominance over these possessions, and so they just keep wanting more and more and more, or protecting what they already have. And so it can cause a lot of issues, so I do agree with the disadvantages that were listed in the text. Okay, let's finish up the model with the last row of questions. We'll start on the advantages side, just like last time. The question is, are there additional advantages beyond the ones that were listed in the text? And I said yes, there are 3. We'll go over each of them. Number 1, can help kids understand the importance of saving money and spending wisely. So possessions really can help kids budget properly, the importance of like saving up money if their parents teach them that, and how to spend their money wisely, because they can't spend it all, in one place. I mean, they could, but then they would not be able to get all the possessions they want. They have to like spend wisely and budget properly. So I think possessions can provide that to kids. Number 2, can make people's life easier and thus allow them to focus on other things. Sometimes possessions actually can help you save time in life, can help you deal with things that maybe you don't know how to deal with otherwise, and need the support of a possession. And so I think that like goes to show that possessions can be your friends, like, and help you through like difficult times, or help you with things that maybe you need support on. So as long as you're like spending your money wisely on possessions that are going to provide you with some level of ease in life, then I think that that's a huge advantage too. And finally, number 3, can potentially increase human interaction. So sometimes like possessions bring people together. They're not always isolating. I think we have this image of a possession being like this thing that I have in my hand, and I'm only looking at that and not interacting with anyone else. But there can be possessions that bring people together. Maybe it's an app, a social media app, that even if you're not physically together, you're connecting with people, and that can be powerful, especially in a time like this when we're really forced to be a little bit more isolated. Having a possession like a phone, even though it is a possession, it can cause a lot of harm, can actually help you cope and bring people together. It can also give you access to information. There's a lot of positives to some of the possessions that we have, and some of them can increase human interaction, which is powerful. And then on the disadvantages side, same question, are there additional disadvantages that weren't listed in the text? And I said yes. I came up with 3 here as well. Number 1, it can lead to people losing their money and going into debt. Like if you don't know how to practice, smart spending and saving habits, you can lose all your money and go into debt, and that is a problem. It can lead to addiction issues where you like have to buy, and then you want to keep buying more, but you don't have enough money, and so you go farther in the hole. There's a lot of issues that can come from relying on possessions. Number 2, can perpetuate stereotypes and societal norms, gender roles, racial biases, etc. There's this pressure for certain groups of people to like possess certain things, and we can take an active measure to break down those stereotypes and societal norms, but they're always going to be present unless we change our mindsets as a society. And so that can be, if we rely heavily on possessions and those possessions are potentially perpetuating gender roles or racial biases, then it's going to be hard to ever kick those things. So, I think about like how on commercials nowadays you always see like advertisements for young boys to buy like action figures and cars and anything that like involves like fighting and being tough. And you see for young girls that they're encouraged to buy like Barbies and dolls and beauty products and it like that like messaging and advertising around those possessions, and even the mindset of parents of how they like buy those things for their kids can really lead to a lot of challenging mindsets and biases that people hold of other people, but that people hold about themselves too. And number 3, I put it can blur the lines between wants and needs. So if we rely so much on possessions and over rely on possessions, we're going to have a hard time differentiating between what we actually need and what we actually want. So the lines are already blurred, but if like we're just people that possess and consume, we're going to have a really hard time differentiating at a point like what is something that I can give up because I actually just wanted it, I don't need it. But it's going to be harder to do that if all we do is just keep buying things because the lines will be blurred. Okay, so there's way more you have to do on your own. That was just a small glimpse into the work you have to complete for today. Hopefully it helped you think through some of the advantages and disadvantages of material possessions and having a culture that relies heavily on it. But make sure you go back to the rest of the lesson plan and read everything yourself so you can be 100% sure that you complete everything you have to complete for today. For tomorrow's lesson, lesson 42, the learning target is I can plan and design a research study that explores how my family and friends connect personal possessions to their definition of self. So tomorrow you're going to be actually like putting together a research study very similar to the one in the text to see like how someone in your family or a friend of yours connects personal possessions to their definition of self. On Friday, you're actually going to carry out the research study, but tomorrow you're just going to design it, and I think you'll all enjoy it. This is the first research study we're doing during virtual learning, and I think it'll really tell you a lot about yourself, but really about the people in your life, like your family and friends. Thank you so much for learning with me today. I really appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun. A few quick reminders before I go. Number 1, don't forget to talk about your lesson with someone. Number 2, read 20 minutes and complete a reading log entry. The reading log is at the front of your packet. And number 3, practice reading fluency using the first or second page of your weekly reading. And you can go back to the front of the packet to remind yourself what you have to do for reading fluency. As always, email your teacher for support. If you have any questions, they are your first line of defense. Thank you so much for your time today. And remember, keep learning.